One couldn't help but notice that there is a massive difference between the European and the US trucks, even though they are very similar in alignment. Daimler brands, such as Mercedes-Benz, Freightliner, and Western Star, are very similar to Peterbilt and Kenworth, with the latter two being considered siblings to the DAF. Furthermore, the Traton Group, formerly known as Volkswagen Truck and Bus, has acquired a stake in Navistar. With all of the similarities that are drawing these companies together, there is a huge difference between them, and that is a fact. The most obvious difference when it comes to these types of trucks is that the trucks in Europe have a bigger preference for cabovers than hooded engines compared to the North American highways. This is only the tip of the iceberg. If you dig a little deeper, you'll discover that there are numerous approaches to weights and dimensions, emissions, and even preferences for automotive-like finishes. Darren Grosby, who is the Vice President, Powertrain and Advanced Technology, spoke about the core difference between these two categories of trucks, adding, "It's interesting. Things like emissions technologies are really being driven from North America. Some of the safety technologies are being driven from Europe, but conversely, autonomous operation is coming out of North America." And yes, it's worth noting that the trucks in Europe have evolved against the backdrop of the different regulations. For example, Europe's cabovers are largely the results of rules that put a greater emphasis on overall vehicle length. This is noted by Johan Agerbrand, who is Director of Marketing for Volvo Trucks North America. 40-foot trailers that are attached to individual 4x2 tractors are more the norm on the other side of the Atlantic. Europe's typical gross value weights of 88,000 pounds are also closer to the Canadian truck experience than the 80,000-pound tandem configurations that travel across the North American state. Obviously, every category has its own pros and cons, and the cabover's biggest pro is the fact that they are easier to maneuver through the tight confines of densely populated urban centers. On the other hand, conventional trucks offer a more comfortable ride, due to the fact that the driver's position is not directly above the engine. Agerbrand also spoke about the engine access and how items in a cabover are not strapped down, which has been known to cause crashes through the windshield when everything's tilted for a repair. Look where the axle locations are on the trailer. They're somewhere around 2/3 the length of the trailer. And where would we be if we didn't talk about the engines? Emissions have evolved over time, and the priorities of European and North American trucks have shifted dramatically. European regulators took an earlier interest in reducing nitrogen oxides, therefore leading to the earlier adoption of diesel exhaust fluid. This is something that's been known as AdBlue in Europe, and Grosby said, "Selective catalytic reduction, or AdBlue, has been around in Europe for at least 5 years before it made its way here. Although the regulators are very much improved in the States, the difference is now barely noticeable in this view, but it's still something that exists," with Agerbrand adding, "Over time, the emission legislations are getting closer and closer to each other." Still, he adds that it wouldn't be easy to use the exact same engine on both sides of the Atlantic, due to the fact that the distinctive standards governing things, like engine speeds and loads during certification processes, are going to present a massive problem. And even if you go to Europe, you'll notice a difference between different parts of the continent. For example, in Southern Europe, engineers face stricter rules on any noise that's produced, thanks to an 80 decibel limit. North Americans, however, have an increased focus on reducing greenhouse gases, and that is something that Grosby hopes will play a crucial role in the future. You can't really regard the truck as a collection of parts anymore. You have to look at a truly integrated system. It's just not going to be possible to optimize everybody's solution in everybody's application. The safety is also different between these two continents, with the Europeans having different crash tests. For example, one distinctly European crash test slams a bar that weighs about the same as a full-grown moose into a truck's A and C pillars. Then, the cab needs to remain rigid enough to open the doors, and rest assured that this test is not present in North America. If you do a generalization, safety standards in Europe are a little bit tougher to abide by. You have more trucks or cars designed in Europe that would actually pass and get approved in the US than vice versa. With that being said, what do you think about the safety of trucks in Europe and in the US? And more importantly, which truck do you prefer? Let us know in the comments below.